Very good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today to commemorate the 1 year release of Geospatial Guidelines. Um, Last year, on this very day, on 15th February, DST had released the Geospatial Guidelines, which have unleashed the potential of geospatial data and technologies for our country. It has given a lot of leeway for our industry, as well as the use of this data by various government organizations and other enterprise users. So, AGI and DST have come together for marking this day and to take a look at what has been the journey for our industry and this sector in the past 1 year, how we have fared, and what more is required to be done in the years to come. So, I would like to invite now Mr. Agendra Kumar, President AGI and Managing Director ESRI India, to give his welcome address.
Good morning, uh, all the participants who are present here. Mr. Sunil Kumar, Joint Secretary DST and Survey General with additional charge. Ms. Anju Bhalla, Joint Secretary DST. Uh, Mr. Alok Prem Nagar, Joint Secretary Ministry of Panchayati Raj. Colleagues from the industry and all the participants who are joining us virtually. I invite. I'm happy that we are able to conduct this program to commemorate the anniversary of announcements of new geospatial data guidelines, which was exactly 1 year ago, and it was really an important day in the history of the country, and not only for the geospatial community. It was a day which should be written in golden letters for even the users, industry, anybody who's anywhere connected with geospatial uh, technologies today, because geospatial is important, and whether we realize or not, we all use maps some way or the other in our lives every single day. So it's a very important step which took place exactly a year ago. I'd also like to thank DST for collaborating and supporting us in organizing today's event, and also Geospatial World uh, for all the help in organizing this, and making sure that a lot of people are able to join virtually and broadcasting it for larger participation in this event. Uh, our chief guest, Honorable Minister, will join later, and Secretary DST, Dr. Chandrasekhar, also will be joining us a little later today. Uh, so it's as I was mentioning that 15th February last year was an important day, wherein the multiple policies that used to exist for decades were done away, and one single geospatial data guideline was announced, and it's a step in the right direction, and we all have welcomed this over the year, and we've seen a lot of progress happening in terms of movement of projects. There are projects like Swamitwa and Gati Shakti, which got announced, which are important projects, and geospatial data and technologies can be of immense value when such projects are executed. Uh, the whole new geospatial data guidelines and the draft policy which was circulated thereafter created a very positive environment for the geospatial industry and the geospatial user community in the country. Uh, as we all understand, there are multiple areas where geospatial can help us in creating a lot of value, economic value, social value, and improve the productivity, and give us benefits of saving time and cost in execution of projects like what we do in infrastructure, whether it's highway construction, road construction, airports, ports, such large highway construction projects. Agriculture and health sector are two other common, very important areas where these technologies and content can help quite a lot. Of course, in rural and urban development, programs like Amrit, Har Ghar Jal, those kind of government initiatives can very well be supported by geospatial industry and geospatial content and technologies for better execution, timely execution, and thus saving cost and providing benefits to people in a shorter time. However, let's realize that it's only 1 year. It's not a whole lot of time, and in 1 year, at least 3 months were lost, 3 or 4 months were lost because of severe increase in pandemic situation. However, government and industry collaboration has increased quite a lot, and Mr. Sunil Kumar, Joint Secretary, who's driving this, has played a very key role in bringing industry and government departments together. In fact, industry, academia, government, and other users are talking very frequently now to see that what more can be done to ensure that we take maximum benefit out of these guidelines and use geospatial technologies in newer areas and of course existing areas also. Uh, for the focus of this entire geospatial guidelines was on data, because data is a very important component of geospatial ecosystem, and using for building any geospatial use cases or applications, unless you have good data, you wouldn't really be able to get any benefit out of applications or technology deployments. So there is definitely a need to create more data. Data availability will gradually improve because it takes time. It doesn't happen in a very short time. Given the positive policy environment, we are moving in the right direction. But data creation is an activity on which a lot of focus should be given by government as well as the industry colleagues and users. Uh, uh, Unlike uh, uh, in many countries where data creation has already happened over 10, 20 years, if you look at UK or Canada or Australia or US, where geospatial data is available for variety of uh, sectors, and they already have policies and processes for sharing geospatial data amongst different users. I think we have some scope to catch up there, and I would like to make some suggestions. One is that I think from government side, whether it's national mapping agencies like Survey of India or Geological Survey of India, then we have Forest Survey of India, NatMo, RGI, and MOSPI, and other organizations where a lot of government data is created. I think that's a very valuable data, and more investments and effort should go in creating data creation at these national mapping organizations. And a lot of the data should be made available to users as well as industry, so that the maximum value of that investment in data is realized. And when I talk about the investment in data, looking at the entire size of economy that we have, or the total government's budget we have, or even DST's budget we have, the amount involved is not going to be huge. It will be an amount which can be well afforded by us as a country, and invested in geospatial data creation. I give example of when we talk about data creation, I give example of road infrastructure. So there are many roads. There are most of the roads which are available free to everyone because you need that. And then there are some roads for which you pay toll, because those roads give you more value in terms of speed and saving time. So you are willing to pay for that. But like government invested in creating a road infrastructure and so many other infrastructures, I think there's an investment focus is required in creating geospatial data for the country, so that it can benefit the entire population. Unfortunately, geospatial industry is still very small. Most of our industry members who are involved in services, they, they do significant amount of business outside of India. Why do they do that? Because of multiple reasons, and are easing up. Uh, Government has put in a lot of new processes over last few years in place, which are making business easier in India. Of course, it's a process. It's a journey. It's not something which will happen overnight. It's a change which the country is trying to achieve. But today, when we do a project with government, I think due to the efforts by various participants, we see that RFPs are coming, which have more clarity in terms of what is expected, and how the deliveries will get accepted by the users, and how the payments will be made. So I think that process is, there's an improvement happening in that. Of course, in some areas where procurement is possible through GEM, things have become more streamlined, but not every service project can be done through GEM. But the good part is that we have seen progress in better project execution, better expectations, better clarity of requirements, and better processes for managing a project. So that's a very positive sign. Now these things will should give us more confidence in terms of focusing on the Indian business, and working with government uh, in sort of a collaborative manner, so that industry can join hand in supporting government in executing those projects. And once these projects get executed and we have more data available, I think the learnings are going to be immense for everyone. And as so many large projects coming up, a lot of new government priorities are coming up. I think it's a great opportunity for industry as well as the user community in India to join hands and use geospatial content and technologies for execution of more and more projects. And I think, given the technical know-how and technical capabilities that we have in India, I mean, we have a huge technical resource base in the country. We get thousands of new engineers and graduates coming out. Scaling up for us should not be very difficult, provided we put some right skill building programs in place. And once we scale up, I'm sure India can be one of the leaders. I mean, we are not far behind other countries, but in terms of making available Indian geospatial content, I think we can be a leader in a very short period of time. I'd like to mention that geospatial services from India are among the best in the world, and a lot of large global companies depend on Indian companies to provide services in geospatial sector. India is among the top countries for IT enabled services. Similarly, in geospatial, also many of our large companies are doing fantastic work for global utilities and government customers, and many other areas. Uh, uh, then there are other couple of other things which probably we require. As we create the data, we need to set up some systems for sharing of that data and content with various users. Of course, uh, these lot of these things will require deeper thinking. I think in some areas, with Mr. Sunil Kumar's initiative, a lot of dialogue is already happening. There are committees in place who are discussing how how the policy should be implemented, what are the key nuances of policy which need better focus, and how the realizing the potential of the data which exists today and what needs to be created can be done in a better manner. So a lot of that discussion is happening. I think more discussion and more involvement will be welcome, so that we can have better coordination among government users and the industry. With that, I would like to close my short opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Kendra. I would like to invite Mr. Sunil Kumar, Joint Secretary DST and Surveyor General of India, Digital Charge, to please give his address.
Good morning, friends. You may recall not a very long ago, the policy environment for the geospatial sector was cluttered. It was mired in cobweb. In fact, I recall when I was asking about the kind of approvals that are required, when I interacted with Survey of India, I was told a Survey of India does not give any approvals. A point blank, this was the response I received from Survey of India. And then when I interacted with people in the industry from amongst you, I was told there are agencies in Ministry of Defense, maybe Intelligence Bureau. We have some single point clearance committee. We have military survey. Nobody knew for sure where does it start and where does it end. I mean, whom do you apply and where do you get the necessary approvals from? I recollect some of you were in the court fighting with the government. So this was the environment not very long ago, and fortunately, in close association with you all and with your inputs and with active support from the government, the guidelines last February were brought out, and as you all know, these were quite refreshing. As I always say, very innovative guidelines. In one stroke, the language of the guideline was that they superseded any guidelines, whether they existed, whether did not exist. It superseded all those previous issues in the matter, and DST was made the single point of reference where industry should look up to for anything related to a geospatial sector. So that was the kind of clarity these guidelines brought about. Uh, there are a lot of innovative concepts also introduced by way of these guidelines, the thresholds, the concept of a negative list of attributes. You are aware. One of the most important thrust given by the guideline was the aspect of collaboration amongst various stakeholders. I mean, starting from the government, Survey of India, different surveying agencies within the government, and of course the industry, academia, research, everyone. And as Agendra pointed out, and I take pride in this fact, last year or so, we have been interacting closely with all the stakeholders. In fact, when the guidelines were released, I had the arrogance to say to a couple of you that maybe this is one of those rare times when government gave the industry more than what they asked for. And I'm pleased to share with you that we are trying to keep the momentum up. We are trying to keep the engagement with all our stakeholders at the same level. We are trying to take it to the next level, and we actively seek your cooperation, all of you. In fact, after the release of the guidelines, if I may share with you some of our kind of steps that were required to be taken to take the process forward, the like the concept of negative list of attributes. You are aware that the guidelines also provided for the constitution of Geospatial Data Promotion and Development Committee. So the first thing, one of the first things that was done after the release of the guidelines was the constitution of this committee, and the committee did meet a couple of times last year to look into the aspects, different aspects related to the smooth implementation of the guidelines. And one of the major things, the committee finalized the negative list of attributes, and that was one of the starting points. As you are aware, before the release of the guidelines, security aspects used to be a major consideration. So this was one innovative way to take care of all the security aspects related to the sensitive of data. So that was one major accomplishment which was done, I'll say, very much in time. And another thing which is a key component of the guideline is about the self-certification portal. Although we are a little behind, I'll say, in our own assessment, but I do not know how many of you are aware, the dummy portal has been designed and developed by DST, Survey of India, and NIC, and it is there for your comments. Again, lately I find that DST has been quite forthcoming in its interaction with the stakeholders. Sometimes we fall short, many times you also fall short. So the self-certification portal, incidentally, there was not a single comment, I would say, from the industry side, neither from the AGI nor from the Geospatial FICCI by the deadline of the portal, which I think was something like 20th January or something. So anyway, I request all of you to please visit this portal, give your valuable suggestions so that we can make it smooth for you. It's all about ease of living, ease of doing business. So the smoother the portal is, it will be easier for you to do business. In fact, as Agendra was pointing out, we have various committees in place. We have a committee looking into the technological aspects of the implementation of the guideline. We have one subcommittee looking into the legal matters. Lately, we have also constituted one committee at the, I think, with the suggestion of the industry. In fact, you recall last June, we had a stakeholder consultation with industry in which one of the suggestions given was, let us have some kind of a working group which will look into the scaling and scoping of various geospatial projects in this country. In fact, I also feel that somewhere this country does not have a plan whereby one should be able to know what is the kind of accuracy, what is the kind of scale at which the entire country requires to be mapped, which is the kind of geospatial technology which are available, which is what is the capacity of the industry. So I mean, from both demand and supply side, from the planning side, we do not have a country level document, so to say, which all the government departments, which all the local bodies, which everybody can look at, so as to know this is the plan for the country and this is the capacity available with the industry. This is the kind of geospatial technology that we have as on date, and maybe this is our roadmap for 3 to 5 to 10 years, whereby this should be achieved. So I'm happy to, you would be aware that this committee is constituted. Your representation is also there. I mean, the industry representation is also there. And we expect them to give us a good working document for everybody, for all of us to look up to. In fact, after the release of the guidelines, my colleagues from government would share my feelings. The data of Survey of India, which used to be so inaccessible. So one of the first things which was done after the release of the guidelines was the abolition of all those forms that were required to access the data of Survey of India, and which used to have some kind of a liability on anyone who was using Survey of India data. I mean, those criminal liabilities used to be there. So those forms were abolished. Survey of India went one step forward. They launched an online portal where now Survey of India data can be accessed online and they can be bought on the click of a button. Of course, there is a long way to make this portal smooth in its working and maybe dynamic in its data availability, but it's a good beginning. It's a humble beginning, but it's a giant step, I think, for the organization, which used to be so close not very long ago. In fact, because of the guidelines, our partnership with ministries like Panchayati Raj and these schemes of national importance, schemes like Swamitwa, now we are in a much better position to accomplish the objectives of the Swamitwa in a time-bound manner and to take its objectives to the last mile. So the guidelines facilitated now greater collaboration of the industry in execution of this project. And you are aware that Survey of India has lately started the process of empanelment of the companies, which again came from the last stakeholder meet that we carried out with you. It was one of the suggestions, and we are taking it forward. And hopefully, I think shortly, in a matter of weeks now, the panel should be ready, whereby Survey of India should be engaging with the industry for execution of projects like Swamitwa. So that's again a very good step forward. In fact, courtesy the guidelines, I was having some interaction during this weekend, Friday and Saturday, with many of you, and I was told that some of the DGCA permissions, which earlier used to take 6 months to 1 year, now it takes about 6 days. So that is the kind of progress that we have made, let us say, by way of these guidelines. But again, these are only the beginning, and we have a long way to go. One of the good things, again, from Survey of India side and with active support of Swamitwa project, the Survey of India is in the process of establishing CURS network all over the country. So as Agendra was pointing out, on the part of the government, there is still, I mean, a lot of grounds to be covered in terms of the, let us say, social infrastructure, in terms of the creation of data and other things. So this will be one important milestone, I think, which should be accomplished this year, sometime, let us say, by August or September, whereby, to my understanding, map making and creation of geospatial data is going to be revolutionized in this country. And I think you would agree with that. In the policy environment, again, you are aware, drone rules have been simplified. Remote sensing policy is again being simplified. What I was trying to share with you was we are making efforts, so all-out efforts to create an environment whereby everybody, with your active cooperation, we all play our individual role, and we are able to achieve projects of national importance like Swamitwa and Gati Sakti and other projects. And also the enterprise in this country, the enterprise, particularly in the geospatial sector, they are also able to achieve the heights that Agendra was hinting at. In fact, again, happy to share with you. Industry is, I guess, is already seizing the opportunity. Uh, 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 During my interaction, I was told one of the companies, which is about 2,000 odd strength company, they are hiring manpower to take it to now 3,500. We just had this successful IPO, one of your companies. What I would like to say here, I mean, it's my simple request, and I think I repeat it at every forum. Although government has its role in creating that policy environment, in giving you the social infrastructure, in giving you the foundation data set, but still I believe industry needs to play a much bigger role. Of course, I mean, it will be some time before we are able to reach there, but I believe money lies in the market and value lies in innovation. There is a limit up to which we can look up to government projects. So the collaboration with government, I request and expect from you to take it to next level, and I'm always there, including today, for your suggestions. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, respected delegates, Sunil, Anju ma'am, and everybody else who are here, Sanjay ji. Um, I'm very privileged to be here. This is out of my depth, really. But the reason that I'm here is because we have a scheme and Swamitva scheme, which Survey of India did a very good job of first bringing to our attention and then helping us conceptualize it and rolling it out now all over the country. So I suppose all of you would be aware, but just for the sake of completeness, in Swamitva, we use the help of Survey of India for drone image capturing inside the rural habitations, which are known by different names. It is Lal Dora or Abadi areas. So the reason we started doing it at the beginning was we thought most of this area was unsurveyed, and we found out by and by that there are some states which have a legacy data already available with them, and we were improvising constantly. We continue to do it. In fact, the tuna marking criteria is now being dispensed with in the case of certain states because one found that it was creating more problems than solving. So with this, the people would be able to leverage their property for sourcing loans. And as far as Swamitva is concerned, creation of 1:500 scale 5 centimeter map accuracy maps for the rural habitations is the end. But in this audience, it seems here that that is the beginning. So it is an end for the person who has not had a property title to his name in respect of a house that the person may have occupied for several generations. So, but that aside, from the sense I got listening to Sunil, and from a paper, an editorial I read by Professor Bharat Lohani this morning in a newspaper. So one finds that this is something like it's a starting block for the kind of services that you can envision and you can roll out, and you can give people a taste of, something like Google Maps, how you could use it in your day-to-day business. So that is what Swamitva does. It also gives an opportunity for spatial reimagining of entire landscapes. More on that later, because we are also in the middle of formulating our Vision 2047, and a lot of cross flow of ideas is happening. And if we have to, well, more on that later. So that is what Swamitva does, and thanks to the excellent professional leadership provided by Survey of India, we've been able to do drone survey in about 107,000 villages till now, of which the property cards have been distributed to almost 40 lakh families in about 27,000, 28,000 villages all over the country. So, but there's lots to do. There are 6 lakh villages that we are supposed to cover. So when we made this beginning, I would be talking to, it was lockdown period. So we started this VC meetings. I would have people from the civil aviation, the drone people, Amberji, and Sunil and all of you. And we used to think of these challenges, ki data kaise hoga. I asked Survey of India. In fact, Sunil was the first who said that why don't we have an end-to-end thing? So right from data capture to producing final maps. And then Survey of India had issues because the information could not be shared with private vendors because of the erstwhile policy. But all that, so this has happened. It's amazing stuff that has happened over the last 1.5 years, more than a year actually, because this was already in the pipeline. And at that time, we'd also conceive of consortia and joint ventures between geospatial and drone companies, so that this we could have the end-to-end production of our products, which were the final maps. And the apprehension was, in fact, that drones wale bhi chote hain, geospatial are big, so we need to strike a balance in what kind of ownership. You remember we had this talk once. So that was Pankaj who said that the geospatial companies are really big and drone people are small. So how do we give them, proportionate amount of control? So from that we've come a long way, and we've come to the present stage where Survey of India is actively doing a POC in respect of final map production by vendors. They're also doing, remote data processing for ortho rectification. They're trying out apps that have been developed where you upload the raw image data into the cloud and it gets converted. So it's exciting stuff that is happening, totally out of my area actually. But then we save so much in terms of time, and that it is very exciting to be associated with. So feature extraction is an immense opportunity that would be there for several years, not just account of Swamitva, because as we are doing this, yesterday the LG of Jammu Kashmir came and met the Honorable Minister looking for support for drone-based mapping outside Abadi areas. So that is also catching like wildfire. Some of you would know that Karnataka and Andhra are already doing that. And so you're not just covering Abadis, you're going over the entire areas. Of course, the Survey of India has to guide people whether drone is the best way forward, or do we have other technologies where you don't need, large scales to the extent that we are doing in habitation areas. So that opportunity would continue to persist for several years, because this catches on. People want to emulate the neighboring state, and it's only a matter of time before everybody starts to want that. And so if one wants something and the resources are readily available, then chances are that you are going to roll over to the other side. So be there, because this is a market that would continue to open up for some years. Continuous operating referencing stations are something that we are establishing. In fact, Sunil already said that by August we would probably have a nationwide network in position, testing, commissioning, everything completed. And so that would, I had said the last time we'd met in Hyderabad, that Maharashtra has become the first state who's actually deepening the use of CORS through providing rovers to all of their tehsils. So this is again something that people are going to learn from each other, and sooner or later they would all want to do it in their own states, which means that when you ask for a demarcation, you would not have a person traveling with a large piece of cloth and looking at the appropriate patch, and then based on the wrinkles that are available, your land is in or out of a certain area. So you would have these people traveling with rovers and monitors, and they'd be able to do stuff that was otherwise considered their private domain. Maharashtra is also looking at having service providers in the market who would provide these demarcation services. So I said that one learns from the other. We rolled out Swamitva based on the learning from Maharashtra. So which is why I keep on making a reference to them. Vision 2047 I mentioned, and those of you who are already in the know of things would know that we would have a continuous urbanization of spaces, and which leads one to think that the differentiation between urban and rural is artificial, is something that we create for ourselves because humans are the same everywhere. What you need are some services and benchmarked services so that you are comfortable and you don't just move out of places because the service level provision in a certain place is not up to the mark. I think the projection is that 50% of our population is going to be in urban areas. You can't have people running to Delhi, or otherwise you'll have this Jia Sarai or Pilanji type of places. And so you need to provide these services back there. Like I said, you have to reimagine your spaces. Swamitva would provide uh, a means of helping people relocate, in the sense that there are villages in Uttarakhand that are already deserted. People have all moved out, and there are whole villages where there's nobody living. It's like haunted. So, and then you also have places where there is a constant uh, visitation of floods, if I may use the word. So these people would have an incentive to move out of their places. So there is room for spatial, planning of these places, because the foundation data would be available. One expects that even outside habitations, people are going to be there to fill these spaces out, whether at the initiative of the state or the district or whoever chooses to, or even urban local bodies. So there is room out there for a lot of innovation happening, and the geospatial policy, I imagine, would make it easy for you to organize yourselves. There is also, I've seen my son do it several years ago, that there are games, when you have resources and you plan out whole cities. कुछ होता था ना कैसा. So why don't we do gamification of these rural spaces? And we already have an endeavor in the Ministry of Panchayati Raj where they try and plan for their Gram Panchayat development through the Finance Commission grants. And then if there were these products that were available, then formulation of a GPDP could become, a competition, and young kids and young people would be doing that. And so that is the kind of explosive adoption of technology that we need. If we wait for it to happen on a pro rata basis, we would be wrong. We would be completely wrong in being able to read the situation. So that was another thing that I needed to mention to you. There is so much that is happening all together, that there is drone policy that is constantly being liberated. First they had your green zones and red zones. Reds, of course, were very few, and now even the pilot training is something that can be done remotely, plus the geospatial policy. So Swamitva was lucky to happen in a time when all this is happening. We are reaping the rewards, but it is only the tip of the iceberg, and there is much more to come. So that is pretty much all that I wanted to say today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nagar. Now we have Professor Bharat Lohani joining us online. Professor IIT Kanpur.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you very much, AGI and DST, for inviting me for this presentation. Sunil ji, Anju ji, Alok ji, Agin ji, and all the friends in the audience. So what I will do today, because I know the other speakers are going to talk about many other aspects, I will focus my talk on something which is the foundation and foundation of our industry, foundation of our R&D. That is the academics part, that is the training part. And as Alok ji also pointed out this morning, we published one op-ed in the Hindu, and there we are talking of many other issues. But I'm not going to work or discuss all these. Rather, I will be focusing on the academics and the R&D part, because otherwise that is something which left out. Last year, when the geospatial data guidelines they came, I published this article in Current Science. And the intention of this article was how these guidelines will impact the research and education. And also, I tried to propose some roadmap there. I also looked into what are the things which are ailing the research and education system in geospatial in particular in our country. So since then, we have moved a lot, and it is now 1 year, and we are celebrating the anniversary of launch of our new geospatial data guidelines. So my talk will focus on these. Particularly, I will try to address the question whether the guidelines alone are enough. I will look into the bottlenecks and the roadmap. So regarding the impact of the guidelines in last 1 year, what I notice from my connections in the academia, that is still in academia, the impact of the guidelines is not felt as it should have been. Still, there are queries and about the provisions. Still, people are not aware what is possible, what is not possible. For example, data sharing. In academia produces a lot of data. Out of the research project, a lot of data is generated. So whether that data should be shared or not shared is still a question mark. So many are still considering that as a taboo. So the reason for this, I say yes, because the guidelines definitely are not enough alone. They are the catalyst, but a lot more needs to be done. And the reason for what we have today is because of our the mindset or the inertia that we have developed over last couple of decades. Because over last couple of decades, we are trained, we are told that the data is not to be shared, or rather, as Sunilji said, there can be some, if you are taking the data from Surf India, there are criminal provisions if you are sharing the data, the data should not go out of the lab. So when we used to give laboratory exercise to the students, we used to make them sign big forms. So that whatever the data, aerial photograph they are using, they should not take it out of the lab. So still we are going with that mindset. So we need to work on that, and we need to educate the academia and the R&D institutions. So what I say, yes, because of this no awareness, there is yet the ecosystem is not developed. One more thing that I would like to focus here, and that is very, very important for me. This is, and it has a historical reason. In India, our remote sensing program, the satellite remote sensing program, is quite developed. We have also good trained individuals in satellite remote sensing. But when we come to the high resolution remote sensing, or I mean the data captured from the photogrammetry, from LiDAR, from SAR, whatever the aerial sensor that we are talking about, or maybe now the drone. In that, in our academic institutions, there is not much in training part. Also, the R&D in high resolution remote sensing is lacking, similarly the practice of this. Well, the reason for this is very obvious, because the high resolution data was considered classified, and that data was not available for the R&D. That data was not available for giving laboratory exercises to the students. And because of this, the high resolution remote sensing, its academia or its training, its R&D is completely lacking in the country if we compare ourselves with the countries elsewhere. But high resolution is becoming the important. That is also the core point of our new data guidelines. Low resolution data in any case was available. Low resolution data in any case could be used by people. And more we are talking now about the high resolution. So this particular part, that India lacked training and the research in high resolution, is going to impact whatever we are talking about the development. We are talking about new technologies, new solutions using the high resolution data. Unless we have supporting environment in terms of the education and the R&D, it will not happen. Well, I have a hypothesis, and let me present this hypothesis here. So if I say what is geospatial, we all right now in this room will have a very different kind of answer. Some of us will think that, okay, geospatial is GIS. Some of us will think geospatial is geodesy. Some will say geospatial is surveying. Some will say geospatial is remote sensing. Some will say geospatial is photogrammetry or LiDAR or the SAR and so on. So right now, we don't have, or rather we don't think the entire spectrum of the geospatial. And that is obvious also. I don't, it is just fine, because the way we are trained, the way our training has been in the geospatial in our country has been like that. If you see how the people are trained in the geospatial, mostly the people are exposed to the geospatial in their master's level course or in their, say, on-job training. So they remain focused on a very narrow spectrum of the geospatial. We don't have, and I say it because I try to understand this sector, and from that experience that I have got, I say that India lacks a strata of core professionals in geospatial who can think the entire spectrum when we say geospatial, who can think starting from the geodesy, from the coordinate reference systems, from the projection systems, from the surveying, then to the aerial, then to the drone, then to the satellite, and then to the GIS, then to the databases, then to the big data, then to the machine learning, deep learning on this data. Right now, we don't have that core of the professionals in our country. And unless we create this core of the professionals in our country, we will not be able to develop the technologies that we think of. We'll not be able to visualize this entire sector in the right perspective. So this is the lacuna or the lack of our education system. Well, what are the roadmaps? I would like to present very quickly some roadmaps over here. One thing I say, and I have been talking about it since early 2012, when we had also an MSRD committee, that we should have more bachelor's level courses, 4-year courses in IITs and in NITs. How the geospatial developed in the West? In the West, the geospatial is taught in bachelor's level, either in 3 years or 4-year long courses. But in India, we have very few, 1 or 2 places are running these 3 and 4-year courses. But still, the bachelor's level courses in geospatial are not the mainstream yet. So this is an area where the emphasis needs to be put. And why? Because we want to create the key persons in geospatial. The meaning is they should be able to think the entire spectrum, and they should have the expertise in one area. So we need more and more such people in India in order to support our geospatial work. Another suggestion that I make, and this is also somewhere in the policy document, the draft policy, that we should have a national geospatial university. And this university should produce the core professionals, as I'm trying to visualize, those who know the full length and breadth of the geospatial technology. So the emphasis should be in producing those. This geospatial university should become the center of R&D, of all kinds of R&D, and for providing the consultancy to the national programs. For example, like Sunilji said, the Alokji said, that there were confusion, the what kind of scale we should talk about when we talk about the entire country data. So there is a confusion on this. So unless we have a think tank, unless we have the people who come together, sit in one place, and provide consultancy to our national problems, it will not be possible to arrive at the right kind of answer. So this National Geospatial University should do that. One more thing, I rather go one more step ahead, and especially because we have an extraordinary situation. The high resolution remote sensing, or the geospatial in particular, in India have been going through those restrictive policies or regulations. And because of that, we didn't see the right kind of development in our education, also in the industry, and so on. So I think a university like this can create a cadre of the geospatial trained people, like similar to the SCR in the railways. And these people who are trained from this university, who know length and breadth of the geospatial, then can be put in the different ministries and the departments. Because right now also, the people who are addressing or the handling geospatial in ministries and departments, they are trained either on job or to the masters, or maybe some diploma of 3 months or 6 months. But instead of that, we need the people who have the complete foundation, length and breadth in the geospatial. So I think a university like this is very important and should be able to handle this, generation of this cadre for our ministries and departments. Well, this is already talked about, that the public funded data, And in particular, I would like to focus on the research funding and the funding that is coming from the DST. So I see that a lot of data is being generated by the academic institutions, the research institutes, and those data, if can be shared across different universities and the research institutions, we can do much more asset monetization, okay? Because we know the geospatial data once captured can have multiple uses. So the funding agencies, for example, DST, henceforth should mandate that the data, if at all any data is being generated, that data should be as per the standards. The metadata of the data should be maintained, and there should be provision for sharing of this data. And this sharing of the data can be through a portal which is there in the DST, like we have the NSTI. More than that, we need a culture of sharing, collaboration, and co-creation. So this culture needs to be developed among our R&D centers and our academic institutions. One thing which I see that as the current geospatial data guidelines are there, we are missing on one aspect. That is, we have restricted now the high resolution data from leaving our shores. So somewhere it is detrimental for the research collaboration. The universities, they collaborate with the universities abroad for the research, and that should be promoted. So I think with the foreigners, we should have some restricted data from some test sites, and those test sites should be such that there is no sensitivity involved from the security point of view. So such test sites can be declared as the test sites where the data can be shared even with the foreigners, because we need the collaboration, research collaboration. So the data sharing is important in that. Well, finally, this is, of course, again talked in the our data policy that yes, academic institutions or some associations should come with the certification system, which is not there right now. Like we have this system in the USA, in other parts, for different professionals, surveyors, photogrammetrists, GIS engineers, geodetists, cartographers, and so on. Lastly, again, yes, I come back to the need of research in the high resolution. And my suggestion is the funding agencies should think of starting the network project on this. And there should be the research sites. And for those sites, we should have all kinds of high resolution data. So there should be the data from aerial LiDAR, mobile LiDAR, terrestrial LiDAR, the hyperspectral photograph, and maybe SAR. And all these data should be shared with a group of researchers under a network. And the research on the high resolution should be promoted. And these sites or the data can be also accessible to, as I said, the foreign collaborators in the research. Finally, the academic startups, yes, very important, because universities are the places where the young minds are there. And these young minds, once given access to the data, once promoted for the startups, can create wonders. That is what we see. So I think, yes, this is also another area where our efforts should be. Fine, good. With this, I would like to end my presentation. So what I noticed that only guidelines alone are not enough, but guidelines are big thing. It's absolutely a watershed moment for India that we have now these kind of guidelines, and we are thinking in a very positive manner. However, at the same time, we need to do much more. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lohani. And with this, the Secretary and Honorable Minister are on their way and they're just joining us in some time. So till then, we can take a short break.
We have Honorable Minister and Dr. Chandrasekhar, Secretary DST, with us now. So before you arrived, we had a few discussions about how the things have changed over the last 1 year and how using geospatial technology and data has become easier due to better policy environment, which was created with the announcement of new geospatial data guidelines. We have, in the current session, we have planned some interventions by members of the industry about their experience, while in the earlier session, we had more views coming from the users of geospatial. So I will hand over to Megha to introduce some of the speakers and then take it forward.
Very good afternoon, sir, and welcome to this brief meeting to commemorate the 1 year of Geospatial Guidelines, release of Geospatial Guidelines. I would like to invite Dr. Srivari Chandrasekhar, Secretary DST, to make an address.
Honorable Minister, friends from academia and industry, good morning, good afternoon to all of you. It's a pleasure that we are celebrating the 1 year of launching of our new policy. And this policy has the blessings of Honorable Minister. Recently, it has been taken forward. And in the morning, we had a roundtable discussion with all of you on how we can take it forward and make sure that whatever commitments we made for this policy are fulfilled. We all know that this has witnessed a groundbreaking revolution in the recent past, impacting all sectors. Today, I think taking the spatial mapping has an impact on many ministries, starting, of course, the largest ministry which has been taking advantage of us has been the Ministry of Panchayat Raj. And we are privileged that we are doing pretty well. Now we have a new additional charge, Director General for Survey of India. And Sunil, thank you for taking this forward with your commitment. Also, this document is really a guiding principle, and we are still open to discuss with all industrial stakeholders if any small tweakings are required for this policy, which will allow you to do better than best. I'm sure with the blessings of Mantriji, we'll be able to take it forward. And many states are now approaching us, and this creates an opportunity for all our startup companies. And the startup companies really should be geared up to have their drones in place and technologies in place and software in place, so that we can really take up all the responsibilities. Even at some point of time, Defense has been talking to us. Today, Forest Ministry looks at geospatial policy. And all these guidelines which we have implemented and modified have really given a lot of freedom to all of you, especially the startup sector and the private industry. And I'm sure you will take forward the dreams of the Honorable Prime Minister of India and make sure that this geospatial policy makes a path-breaking revolution. The kind of disputes we get in the lands in small villages and towns, those also will be addressed once we really map the entire country. The precision at which you are doing this job at almost like 0.15 centimeters or 15 centimeters, I think this is a great precision, and we'll have a great way to go forward. I wish all of you all the best. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. So now we have some interventions by our colleagues from the industry. I would like to invite Mr. Sanjay Kumar, founder and CEO of Geospatial World, to give a brief intervention.
Thank you very much, Megha, and good afternoon to everyone, Honorable Minister and Secretary DST. I'm Sanjay Kumar, and I would like to take a few minutes to just share my views. It's 25 years of my company, and so is 25 years of my professional engagement with this industry. And I must recognize the fact that it's a kind of feeling of being liberated. I do recall 1997, 98, 99, when we ran the campaign in our magazine known as Unshackle the Maps, and we were put all the CBI kind of inquiries against us and things like that. But that's the past. I would like to first of all say that what Sunil said in the morning, that the government gave us more than what we needed or rather aspired for in the form of the policy, and that's a fact. That's a fact, and we must compliment the government of India for such a very open-heartedness in terms of recognizing and trusting the industry to self-certify things and to take the ownership of what they are doing. It has a lot of impacts, and I would like to start with some of the impacts which has made. It's not that this industry did not flourish without, I would say this industry flourished despite and in spite of being so many restrictions. And we had 2021 was almost 38,000 crores economy of the country, geospatial economy, out of which 14,000 crores is the market size, and almost 12,000 crores export of geospatial services, and around 14,000 crores is spent by the government, and out of that 80% is basically in the establishment cost, which is not a part of the market, but that's a part of the economy. And looking at this policy impact, if we go by our regular, without this policy, what we would have achieved by 2025 would be something like 50,000 crores. But with the policy impact, which we have made an analysis, is making it to about 63 to 65,000 crores, which means that almost additional 10% almost is the kind of impact which is there on this market. And what I've been talking about is the policy is just the beginning. The strategy for implementation plan or the industrial development strategy for this sector is very, very critical. You can say that, this guy is always asking for more, but that's the fact that I want to ask for more from everyone. And why I ask for more is the fact that uh, geospatial knowledge is the foundation of data economy. And data economy is a very important asset of national development as well as national security, national sovereignty, because we are in a digital age. While we'll continue to spend our time and energy towards commercialization and consumerization of this technology, we also have a responsibility to build our capacities and innovation and technology to actually secure our systems. So what it has made is, if we look at industrial development strategy, the same 65,000 crores could be 80,000 crores by 2025. I'm really not worried about that 15,000 crores extra money or market. What is beautiful about it is that if you look at a strategy, then you are going to think about how to use this knowledge for increasing productivity and efficiency of the national programs, whether it is Panchayati Raj or highways or railways or urban or agriculture. Are we going to wait for the industry to mature in 10 years on its own, or are we going to actually invest into maturing the industry in 5 years rather than 10 years? To reach to that level where we can start reaping the benefits of this knowledge across all our user industries. And I have been talking to several joint secretaries in ministries that I say, hey, let's talk about 5-7 ministries which can come together and make a kind of master plan to make invest in geospatial sector. So government would remain in next 5 to 7 years the biggest consumer of this technology, primarily because we are in the transformative stage. We are building highways, we are building housing, we are improving all kind of fundamentals of economy, and how to use this tool for productivity and efficiency. That's my thinking around. So, but coming back to the smaller things which are very useful. One is that policy has made ease of doing business. It's definitely the biggest achievement which we have is ease of doing business. My friends in the industry can talk about that. We have now, for permissions, if you're waiting for a year, now we can get it done in 10 days. That's a great achievement, because if I have to build a survey for highways, and instead of waiting for 1 year, I can do that survey in 3 months. So I'm actually expediting the whole highway development. That project is not going to be delayed so much. Second is, this is also helping the industry to move up the value chain. We talked about export of services. We are talking about solutions. We are talking of technology innovation. We can actually think of India as a not only market, but as a source of technology innovation. And that's what I want to compliment. Some of the companies are already taking that route, making investments, making their moving up the value chain is second. And the third is, when we're moving up the value chain, we are also looking at actually exporting our capabilities to higher levels. So we are not just exporting services, but we'll be exporting our applications and our technologies. And some of the Indian companies are looking at the global market. So that's a strategic advantage. Just to highlight some of the sectors, you will find that in next 3 years' time, just 3 sectors, if you look at infrastructure, land, and utilities, they are going to be impacted by 35 to 40% growth in the market. That is the kind of impact is the policy making. And I'm very happy about it. But having said this, I would like to set a few expectations more. And that is, that what is the reality? Reality is that it will take time. So let's be very, very cautious of the fact that we shouldn't actually overhype things to happen overnight. We have to have our narratives which are very constructive and which are actually global. Narratives in terms of global is the fact that we have to project ourselves in such a manner that we are evolving ourselves as a leader, and then we have to look at investments, and we have to look at attracting not only technology investment but also the financial investments in this sector, so that we can our industry can grow. I would like to suggest a few things. One is uh, again, everything revolves around having an industrial development strategy. And first of that is to have an industrial development uh, kind of board or something like where we can think together for a national development. Second is some kind of financing mechanism for the geospatial industries to look into investments. Third is the government. As I said, it's also a tool of sovereignty and security. The government should continue to invest into the foundational data infrastructure, positioning infrastructure, and developing mechanisms for project management. One of the important thing is that when we are going to do a lot of big projects like APDRP and all, which has a geospatial component, we have to talk about project management kind of mechanisms. And then I would like to go back to what Dr. Bharat Lohani talked about, is education. I would like to request Honorable Minister and Secretary DST that 2012, when Dr. Kasturi Rangan committee recommended to set up an Indian Institute of Geospatial Technology, and fortunately Dr. Rangan was also the chair of education policy, we must look at setting up an Indian Institute of Geospatial Technology, because that will provide the foundational knowledge and set the capacity in which we will be investing into fundamental science. More and more we go forward, fundamental science about geodesity, geospatial is very, very important. Uh, Many things are going on, but that fundamental institution, like you have invested into geospatial policy guidelines, it's very important that we set up some kind of fundamental institution which can produce 4-year, 5-year kind of BTech programs. Going forward, you would need a lot of such science in managing the geospatial information infrastructure. And another thing I wanted to say, that public-private partnership, the government should invest into incubation and nurturing the industry, at the same time should actually come forward in PPP mode to do big projects where the industry can also come up with the money and technology both. Why I'm saying that PPP mode? Because PPP is needed for incubating bigger companies in India. You needed to invest in R&D capacities of India. R&D contracts can be also seen, that how do we look at R&D contracts culture in India in this sector. So with this, I would say that we need to look at having some kind of national geospatial industrial strategy. And last, and some of the user organizations are here, that when we start looking at making use of this technology, if we have to see that infrastructure market, which is growing so fast, if we want to make a productivity tool, so there is a need of some kind of sectoral guidelines, and it is not a policy a public policy issue much. It is much of project management issue for those sectors, that they should mandate uses of geospatial technology into their workflows, as Swamitra Yojana is already doing. So as some other ministries like Ministry of Highways and Transport or Urban Development, they should have some kind of sectoral geospatial strategy. And that's what I was requesting, that 5-6 major ministries can come together and they can develop a national geospatial master plan. This is what actually Sunil talked about indirectly in the morning, talking about some kind of national geospatial master plan. And we should invest some more time in undertaking some kind of comprehensive study about the socioeconomic impact analysis of this technology and this whole sector. So with these words, I would like to thank for your patience hearing, and thank you very much.
I'd like to now invite Mr. Rohan Varma, CEO of Mapmyindia, to give his brief intervention.
Good afternoon, everybody. Honorable Minister Dr. Jitendra Singh, Secretary DST Dr. Chandrasekhar. Thank you for gracing the occasion. I'm Rohan Varma, CEO and Executive Director of Mapmyindia. And on behalf of our chairman, my father, Mr. Rakesh Varma, and our co-founder, Mrs. Rashmi Varma, also my mother. I want to extend our heartiest congratulations and gratitude to the government of India for such a historic reform you took exactly 1 year ago. Anju ma'am, JSDST, was telling me earlier that in 1991, when the country was liberalized, sir, Infosys and TCS were requesting the government to help enable them to export and set up base in the US so that they could export services. And by the government doing that in those early 90s, we see what a hundreds of $1 billion, if not $1 trillion industry it has become for India. And the same that we saw last year can enable that in the geospatial sector, in services and products and platforms and technologies. And Sunil Kumar sir, I think you've been the driving force to, in the central glue to make sure that this policy could come around, and carrying forward the work with Survey of India. I mean, thank you so much for that. And Alokji, I mean, such an inspiring way that you presented the vision of Panchayati Raj, use cases, and drones. I think this is fantastic. Dr. Jitendra Singh, PMO, space, the drone sector, as founder member of Indian Space Association also, I can say that the work that you all are doing is fantastic. And finally, I'll say that, three good outcomes have come out of this policy, and definitely this is more than what we could have ever hoped for. The three good outcomes are, on one side, stalwarts from the industry, and India has many really great people in the geospatial sector, have been wanting to join and have joined Indian companies, bolstering the possibility of Indian companies going global. The second is, companies are also trying to Indianize, which is a wonderful thing. They were foreign before, but now they want to become truly an Indian company. And I think that should be extended further to the point where data sovereignty, where we understand the value of data, and that should be monetized, stored, hosted, collected within India. And finally, of course, on a personal front, from Mapmyndia's point of view, this policy enabled us to go public and get a 155 times oversubscription response on our IPO, which was a validation for the sector, which was a validation for the use cases and potential, the multiplier effect that geospatial creates. And it has given us the courage to go global, to take on the giants of the world, and say that whether it's in mapping with our 4-dimensional digital map twin, creating tens of thousands, if not lakhs of kilometers of coverage of 360-degree, 3D, and high definition data for India, or consumer facing apps, a digital address system, or platforms and technologies, we can take on and deliver to the needs of the government. And just in the last 1 year, the kind of big mission mode projects which have happened, we've been able to deliver in just weeks, days, or months, not years, not decades. And unlike the 27 years it took us as a company to get to this stage, I believe the country and the community would benefit from fast moving exponential growth in the time to come. And we don't have any more expectations of the government. I think the government has done what they should do. We want just more of the same, this consistency, because I think the country has unlocked a formula for exponential growth by leveraging the power of maps and geospatial. And this public and private partnership and the innovation we as Indians can do can create a tremendous, economic development for the country, as well as national security and sovereignty. And the one amazing image that was there in the economic survey, I'll end with this, was a Luminosity Map of India, which we helped prepare for Economic Survey, the Office of Principal Economic Advisor, where you saw in 2012 how India was lit up to a lesser extent, and how in 2021 it is lit up significantly. And it's not to say that what is lit up cannot get lit up more, but also, and of course, whatever is not lit up can get lit up more too. The point being, India can get much better, and we Indians can make sure that happens. Thank you for the government. Thank you to the government, and so excited to participate in this forum. Thank you.
Mr. Varma. I now invite Mr. Sajid Malik, CMD of Genesis International, to make his brief intervention.
Thank you, Megha. Honorable Minister, Secretary DST, Sunil Kumarji, and all my friends and colleagues from the industry. We are an Indian company, as most of you know, and over the last 20 years, we have been working internationally in almost every geography of the world. And we have been working with some of the biggest names. We work for the United Nations, we work for governments worldwide. And it used to always be a point of wonder that why we couldn't work in our own country. And I think that this policy has, helped in resolving that matter. We've been trying to work in India for the last 7-8 years, and I am happy to announce that proof of the pudding is in the eating. That our company is now investing close to 500 crores on creating data content for India, and we have a very short video which recently Niti Aayog helped launch our data content program, and this is a result of the clarity that this current policy has. Post this policy, the speed in which we are able to capture and create data is a refreshing change. We used to earlier work for a government project, and we should not get permissions to work for the government itself. So this has been a sea change now for us, and I think that I can speak for the industry that we have the capacity and the capability to meet whatever is the requirements of our country. We in fact work for other countries, so we are willing to invest into the Prime Minister's vision of creating this kind of a foundational data that this country requires, what it requires for its citizens. 1/12 of the urban population of the world resides in Indian cities. This data that we are going to create will eventually impact 1 out of every 8 human citizens in the planet. So we are happy to, would like to thank the people in this room who have made this possible.
Thank you, Mr. Malik. I would now like to open for brief interventions by any other member who would like to say or add to the discussions.
Hi, this is Pramod from Hexagon. I lead Hexagon in the country. Again, everyone has been thank you, Honorable Minister. I would say DST for taking this further, and the Secretary DST, Joint Secretary DST, and Joint Secretary Panchayati Raj. We are proud to share with you Hexagon has participated in creating this infrastructure, the entire chorus network which is being set up. We've done already 7 to 8 states already implemented: Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh. And whatever Sajid has just spoken about, our sensors are being used, the most accurate sensors available globally. And we run the largest global content program in the world. Entire North America is mapped by us, entire Western Europe is mapped by us. And the technology is being massively used even in China to create this entire content program where it has solid multiplier effect in the entire economy. You name a department in US and federal government, they sponsor the flying, they sponsor the best sensor. We carry that, we process it to one level, and then we have the subscription model and the distribution set up in the country where the entire country and the Western Europe are using it, and it really has tremendous impact. And whatever the others have been talking about, how they have progressed so much, that is what we have been doing. And we have more than 31 planes which are flying all the time, and you're refreshing this data. So every 1 year, every 2 years, depending on the type of data which is being collected, we do that. And we are partnering with Genesis, of course, whatever sensors we are talking about. We have sensors which can see below the ground, on the ground, and on the sea even, under the sea, as well as from the air, and on the, mobile mappers, to capture all these 3D data. And using AI and ML as we talk, the workflows are very, very efficient and very automated. And some of the Indian industry colleagues are really working with Hexagon. And after taking off COVID, now we have more than 500 people only processing this data in the country. With this, I would say this 1 year of what we are celebrating today is a great moment for us. It has massive multiplier effect in the economy, and there's much more to go with the startup movement happening. There's so many startups are now contacting us to see how do you utilize this data, how do you utilize the sensor technology, software, and the autonomy, what we bring on the table. Sincerely appreciate this opportunity, and we would love to participate further in all the mission critical programs for the country. Thank you so much.
May I also request, before the next speaker, to have a quick round of introduction for the benefit of the Honorable Minister and other dignitaries in the room. Yeah, maybe with Pramod, we can have a quick round of introduction.
I'm Pramod Kaushik. I'm the President and Managing Director for Hexagon India. Thank you.
I'm Dr. Anirudh Roy. I'm the Chief Technology Officer and also the strategist for Genesis International.
I'm Sajid Mukhtar. I'm the Chairman cum Managing Director of Rotor Group of Industries.
Sir, good afternoon. This is Deepak Avari from Secon India. I'm the Director.
Ravi Kumar from IIC company working for the data and application services.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Rohan Varma, CEO and Executive Director of Mapmyindia.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Sajid Malik. I'm CMD of Genesis International.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sriramam. I'm CEO of Neo Geo Info Technologies Private Limited.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Ujjwala. I'm from Google India.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Devin Lehru. I am the president at ScanPoint Geomatics Limited. We are a 100% indigenous company headquartered out of Ahmedabad and operating across the country.
Good afternoon, sir. This is Rajiv Sharma. I look after the public sector business for Oracle in India.
Good afternoon, sir. Jaswinder from Oracle, Director Solution Engineering.
So I'm Colonel Sai Arul, and I represent Maxa Technologies, and I handle the business of the SAARC countries for them. It's a satellite company, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Dr. Jeetal.
Good afternoon. I'm Sanjay Kumar. I represent Geospatial World, which is an India-based international company, and I'm also the United Nations Global Geospatial Industry Ambassador.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Alok Prem Nagar. I'm the Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Panchayati Raj, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes.
My name is Agendra Kumar. I'm Managing Director of S3 India Technologies Private Limited and also President of Association of Geospatial Industries.
So good afternoon. This is Sajid number 2. We have, as you just saw a presentation from Genesis, Sajid number 1. I'm from a freedom fighters family. Yeah, but I represent the oldest company in India, which started by my grandfather, a freedom fighter, 1936. And he was making Atmanirbhar since then. So I have pretty much seen the technology changes from the chainage and offset like plane table to coordinate systems of total stations, and then to GNS, GPS, and now to drones. We are currently the largest supplier of drones to Survey of India and to Indian Army for capturing the data as precise as less than 5 centimeters GST. Having said that, I have been sitting through the deliberation made since morning. Couple of points that I would like to bring to the Honorable Minister's attention to. There was a mention by Professor Bharat Lohani from IIT Kanpur that we should or we must look into the geospatial courses which are providing specific geospatial courses that we all are doing on a day-to-day basis. Taking a lead on that, our company has already joined hand with Government of Uttarakhand to come up with the first Geospatial Academy with IIT Roorkee as well, and to train the engineers into the geospatial spectrum that we have been exposed for the last 35 years. Second thing is the the Vision 2047, what was being addressed by Mr. Alok Prem Nagar in the beginning from the Ministry of Panchayati Raj, the kind of data that we are generating on day-to-day basis by drones is extremely accurate. You're talking about anything like less than 5 centimeter GST. This imagine what we can play with this. One of the thing that he has highlighted is a floodplain mapping. Villages in Uttarakhand have been vacated because they have been visited or revisited by floods over and all, and then we have to do a lot of inhabitations and other things, rehabilitation of those people. So we can use this data for a lot of other things that we are suggesting now, even to the Ministry of Panchayati Raj. Thanks to the geospatial policy, which has opened up big floodgates for the industry. And I think now it's up to the industry to take it forward from here. Government has done its due. Thank you so much for doing this for us. Thank you.
So, Honorable Minister is with us and he has a little limited time, so we can take more comments later on.
Is anything meaningful to be added?
So just one small point, sir. While we've all spoken about the guidelines and the huge impact that it's had on industry, a positive impact on the industry, there's no doubt about that. However, just a point of submission is while the guidelines are a demonstration of the intent of the government, the policies still remain relevant, the old policies. And as far as industry is concerned, we are required to be compliant with them. So there is a need to update those such that compliance does not, it has legal connotations. So the policy does need to come out both in terms of remote sensing as well as geospatial. Was the submission, sir.
Just to quickly respond to your point, in fact, I mentioned in the morning that this was one guideline which was quite refreshing in its approach, and very rarely in government guidelines you find this kind of language that it supersedes everything, whether they exist or they do not exist. So this was the opening line in these guidelines. So there are no restrictions whatsoever, right? Of course, there are some inbuilt safeguards that, of course, we must all adhere to. You are also aware that the drone rules have also been liberalized, right? So as a part of coherent strategy, the geospatial guidelines were brought about. Then the drone rules were liberated, and even the space-based remote sensing policy is also in quite an advanced state, right? So they are now, all these policies and rules are in sync with each other, and not like earlier that there used to be some ambiguity between, let us say, remote sensing policy and the geospatial guidelines. So all those things have been taken care of. Drone rules, you must have noticed, it is in sync with what the geospatial guidelines opened up, and the remote sensing policy is also on the same line. All right. Thank you.
Sir, if I can just take 1 minute to just add, I think what Sunil says is factually and technically absolutely correct. That remote geospatial guidelines very clearly says that, it supersedes everything. But at the same time, since the geospatial policy and earth observation policy draft policies are in place in the for last 1 year, and they have not been completed, the international community is looking at as that we are still expecting something more. So this is for me as a, like, if I'm an individual, I can actually look at this very clearly and go ahead and do it. But since these policies are in place,
we need to be compliant.
Discussions, international community is definitely looking at more clarity, because they are not consulting legal lawyers. But we know that we can go ahead, and all the industry is experiencing, and they are following the guidelines, and they are doing their work. Companies are apprehensive still because there is already a draft policy in place. Thank you very much.
I can, again, share with you that they are in very advanced stages.
So Honorable Minister Shri Jitendra Singh is here with us. He's Minister of State with independent charge for Department of Science and Technology, Ministry of Science and Technology, and also Minister of State with independent charge for Ministry of Earth Sciences. And sir, last year on 15th of February, you had made this announcement to the public and to the industry that new geospatial guidelines were coming into force, and you really, it was your vision and support that over last 1 year we have seen this big change. And even otherwise, you've been participating in other geospatial industry events and providing guidance to the industry on and off from time to time. I would like to request you to share your thoughts now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again. Seated besides me, Secretary DST, Dr. S. Chandrasekhar, the officiating Survey General Sunil, the galaxy of representatives from the different stakeholders. Over the last few minutes since I've been here and been listening to all the dignitaries, I was sensing a strange fragrance of liberation. So I think that's my opening thought. But that also gives me the satisfaction of feeling vindicated at the end of 365 days. So the decision which was taken and announced on the same date last year may have sounded a little difficult for many to understand. I would not say to digest, because it was a little out of box. But at the same time, I'm sure you will appreciate that it's been possible because we have in Mr. Narendra Modi a Prime Minister who has the capacity to break the taboos of the past. And I think when the friends have been complimented one after the other, somebody down the line would sometimes take time to understand and to answer to this nation why it couldn't have happened before. So it was already a belated step taken, because governments usually feel comfortable working in a status quoist mode, because the person sitting next to me is here for a term and has to move somewhere else, would not like to break the shells unnecessarily or break the glass pane. And the person who is addressing you right now has to go back to get endorsement after 5 years. So he would also not like to. So he becomes even more status quoist than the secretary. So I think this decision and this announcement which was made 1 year back also heralds the beginning of a new work culture that Prime Minister Modi has sought to introduce, a culture based on the requirements of the contemporary times and the dynamism of the pace with which India is becoming global. And as was being mentioned, just before this decision, there was the decision regarding space technology, which was widely reported in the media as unlocking of the space. If you look back 30, 40 years ago, people didn't even know where the Department of Space Technology exists and what is it doing. Maybe after a couple of months, every few months, you would find across one column news in a remote page of a newspaper with the dateline Sriharikota, and nobody knew whether it is Sriharikota. Didn't even know whether Sri is different or Harikota is separate or this is one word. So much they were working, behind the wheel. And now we have private players coming in also there. Because if we have to live up to global benchmarks and meet those standards, we have to also follow the global trends. And I think that is one of the greatest contributions the government led by Prime Minister Modi. Soon after that, even before this decision, just as we unlocked the space, even atomic energy for that matter, we wanted to set up new nuclear plants, but we didn't have enough resources. About 3 years back, the government took the decision of entering into joint ventures. So we are already into joint ventures to begin with the public sector units. So they have, you spend the money, I give you technical know-how. So it's a win-win relationship. And then, of course, 15th February came this decision of geospatial. And soon after this is the liberalization of the drone policy, which he was talking about. And to an extent, we were actually deceiving ourselves in the sense that drones were actually being developed in this country. They were also being tried. But since the guideline that existed earlier made it mandatory that it had to be developed only in the premises of a teaching institution like IIT or so for research purposes. So the drones being sold outside were being clandestinely developed in the campus of the IIT. So I think we have also given up that duplicity and liberated ourselves of committing the sin of that hypocrisy. And this, as we exist now, this trinity, I would call the trinity of geospatial mapping, A, the drones, B, and the space economy, C, is going to be the hallmark of the economy of India in the times to come, and also the sustainable development. And it's no longer an option. If we don't go this way, the world will move on. And the emphasis on data, as was being, when Sanjay was speaking, I think even Rohan said that we were always lacking in data. If we had data, it was more of a fallacious data. I have been always insisting before we came into the government that we need to have Indian data for Indian solutions, which we didn't have. And even if we had, many of us, without saying so much in spoken words, confessed in heart of hearts that it was not reliable. So inadvertently, we depended on data which was provided from other sources. So when we have Indian data through Indian means and reliable means, as was being mentioned, for Indian solutions, I think that will be the way forward. Now, I am also to compliment the Secretary Science and Technology and his team, because the focus is now going to be on the strengthening of the innovation ecosystem. And science technology department and all those engaged with it have a very crucial role to play. And to use another fancy term, I think we are now, when the unlocking of space has happened, I put a small sentence. I said, now India has entered in the age of space economy. So today I can reasonably say that we have entered into an age of geospatial entrepreneurship, because all you guys are making good fortune out of geospatial jugglery. So this is also a new avenue for Indian economics, also for the startups. And I think for that, we also need to create more of awareness in the society, because even today, of course, the startup concept has come very recently. And even today, the mindsets are such that when you talk of startup, they start thinking of IT, and there's hardly any inclination to think that startup has a huge potential in this country, indigenously, organically, for example, in agriculture sector, in dairy sector, which is, I think, richer in this country than many other countries. And now with the globalization happening, what we are discussing today is a new avenue. And that will also be an opportunity for these youngsters and also others who start up, because nowadays, and that's another anomaly, I shouldn't have used that word, because startup also is always, considered to be synonymous with a youngster. I have on my list at least 5-7 very successful startup groups who are past 50, many of them having given up their jobs in the private sector or even in government sector and done very well afterwards. That's also a kind of a contribution by them. And as far as the government is concerned, and we have the representative from Summit scheme also, I think what we can announce to the world today with a certain degree of pride, and which also makes news, because often Summit doesn't make news, is that with all these now facilities available to us, India is going to have a 3D mapping for 100 cities, this in the offing. And at the same time, mapping of all the 6 lakh villages, more than 6 lakh villages in India has already begun. And I think that's going to be a huge game changer. And in the times to come, we are also having new areas where we could indulge. Like, for example, deep sea mission is there with the Ministry of Earth Sciences, which is a sister ministry with him. And of course, in a big way, Morth is already into Sagarmala and other things. Actually, we have started from one or two areas, but we could actually get engaged in a wide variety of roles. And that is why I have been insisting for the last few months that more of synergy is required. And I would rather suggest that next time when we have this meeting of, now incidentally, we have one tomorrow itself. So we could have a representative from the Survey of India also. Because we have started a trend of having joint meetings of all the science ministries. There's the DST, the biotechnology, CSIR, atomic energy, space, even survey. And then also all these gentlemen sitting separately, individually with the other ministries. So it's inter-science ministry, then extra science, and then extra science sitting with these guys who are the stakeholders. So that we can sustain this effort and this initiative. And who was saying this? Somebody said, we have nothing more to look up to the government. I think Sajid 2? Sajid 1 said. Rohan said, government has given something so much that we have nothing more to expect. He thought I'll be flattered, but I'm not. The reason being that I would like you to expect more from us because we are expecting a lot much from you. So, because this has to be a relationship which has to grow. So we have to mutually supplement each other's resources, each other's skills, and we have to keep expecting from each other. If you stop expecting from me, then as a quid pro compliment, I would say, okay, I also don't have to expect anything, but I'm not yet ready to say that. So let's keep expecting and enriching ourselves as some of the concerns, as he said, that maybe the policy framework took some time to be out, and for a number of reasons which were beyond the control of the authorities. You had COVID in between, your third wave, many of them were working from home, some of them in the office, from the hospital, someone from where nobody knew. So, but as he said, I think it's a matter of only a couple of days. And I'm sure in the times to come, we would evolve actually. This is just the beginning. What we are saying today or trying to share with each other is what we have understood as of date on 15th. But there's such a huge knowledge explosion happening. And what we have discussed today might become obsolete by the time when we sit on the 15th of February next year. Just as nobody could have imagined that all these subjects and issues would be discussed just even 5 years back, 10 years back, the 3D mapping and all those things, and the kind of technology that they have available. If they had known this, they would have been deprived of the huge campus that they enjoy in Dehradun. I know how many of you guys have seen that. He can arrange the next meeting over there. It'll be a good outing for you. You know, this is a 360 hectare land where his office is located. And one of the earliest directors was none less than Everest, up from the Mount Everest. It's I think about 200 years old now. Because the gadgetry used was that. They had long, they would look into those doorbins. Now sitting at computer, everything is happening. So I think even a cable will be enough for him. No, so I don't want to sound a bad omen, but the entire culture has changed. So we evolve as a whole, not only as a scientific fraternity, but also in industry, in society. So the understanding is dynamically happening and happening at a very rapid pace. But I'm sure we are now on the right course, and we are also open to everything that the world is exposed to. We are no longer ready to live in a shell. And I'm sure from here we'll move forward. Thank you very much. It was very pleasant meeting you all.
Thank you, Megha. Thank you very much. I'm privileged to actually propose this vote of thanks on behalf of AGI in the position of Secretary General of AGI. Honorable Minister Dr. Jitendra Singh, we would like to place our gratitude for taking your time out from your busy schedule and gracing this occasion, and also to explain how the status quo is being broken with the vision of our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, and how the policies are being now revamped completely, and more policy reforms are coming in various sectors which are around the geospatial policy. And we really thank you very much for this support, sir, for this industry. We can't thank the Department of Science and Technology enough for not only bringing these guidelines, but also supporting the industry going forward with these guidelines, having meetings with various stakeholders, organizations like Survey of India and other national mapping organizations. We'd like to place our gratitude to, DST, ably led by Dr. Chandrasekhar, Sri Sunil Kumarji, who has been instrumental in bringing this policy and also implementing it, working with various organizations, across the country. We'd also like to thank Mr. Alok Prem Nagar for also actually bringing the relevance of these guidelines and how they are helping out in Swamitva scheme, as well as extending it to the large-scale mapping projects which are being undertaken for the entire country. We thank you very much, sir. And also, I would like to thank all our industry colleagues, Sanjay and other people who have spoken how these policy guidelines, along with these policy guidelines, what are the other things that are required to make an industry which will flourish and make the dream of 1 lakh crores revenue in the next few years. So I would like to thank everybody. And also thanks to Geospatial World for having this hybrid platform so that people could attend this event physically as well as virtually. Thank you very much. And finally, I would like to thank everybody who has taken out their precious time to attend this, to celebrate this 1 year of these guidelines. And thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. And we would like all of you to join us for the lunch, which is arranged, I think, in the next room. Megha? Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, just one small point. So you mentioned a very good point, and I would like to really compliment and reiterate that bringing together geospatial, drones, and space, I think it's a great vision. And if we can, with the efforts of yourself and your colleagues in the government, if that's the vision, if we can, India should be the leader in the global stage for that. And as some of the colleagues mentioned, there's a need to have a sort of synchronization between the geospatial data policy and the remote sensing policy. Since both the departments are under you, I took the liberty of...
Tomorrow, actually, we have started that cycle of periodic meetings. Tomorrow, we are going to have one.
Yeah.
And that's why I suggested to him that he should also be there.
Yeah.
And the next stage, then we involve the others also. But now that you have rigged up this, the next stage when we engage with industry has to be slightly in a more committed manner.
Sure.
That we have to engage the industry as the real stakeholders. What happens is that we have some governing bodies, committees. So this year I appoint Sajid, then next year, okay, Sajid's done with, now Rohan. So that enhances their profile and carries on my ritual also. We would now like you to suggest, and also, for example, own or adopt some startups. What kind of skill, what kind of human resource are you looking for? And then you support them and we train them. So that when you have invested something, you will not be easily letting the boys out. So they'll also find livelihood. Otherwise, what happens is our problem is our startups go waste. Having done a project later on, then they appear in a civil service exam and end up as babus. So the entire effort goes. And that happens because even though there are some mechanisms not very optimally placed of engaging industry, they are not in the manner in which it happens in the West. So it has to be more, stakeholder at an equal level. So then the industry will automatically come forward to support you. Like in so many boards you have, like for example, you have to have one member of the Varma. So this year one big house, next year the other one, the third year somebody else comes and says, Now I've been left out, so you do that. So it's becoming more of a courtesy ritual. We would make it more of theme-based, need-based, project-based. So both the sides then get hooked on to each other, and the person who is doing this startup would also find some guardians, mentors to take care of him. So we devise it that way also. We are actually working on it.
Thank you, sir, for your final comments. We can break for lunch. Please join us for lunch.